introduce you guys to Pokemon East and Pokemon West, a brand new Fakemon region set in Brazil. Now, these are the box legendaries for the region, and I'm going to get to those a little bit later. Now, this region is created by Kosta, who you can find on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm going to link all the information down in the description, but let's get into it. The grass starter for the region is Ovalini, which is based on an opossum, and it has a cute little leaf on the top of its head as well. Evolves into Solovine, which is already a grass and dark type Pokemon now. As you can see, that tail is much longer, and you can see the leaf is getting a bit bigger now, kind of starting to form the hair a little bit. And then lastly, evolves into Espinora. It is still grass and dark type. You can see now it's got big vines that are spiky that come off its hair, and it's actually got flower buds on the end of it as well, which can open up and steal the life force out of its opponents, which I think is really cool. The fire starter is called Poco Power, and it is based off a donkey, which I think is pretty cute, but does have a little bit of attitude, which I kind of like. It evolves into Bralope, which definitely has like a bit of a ponytail going on, and you can see the tail goes into a star. And then lastly, Fogalope is the final evolution. It's now a fire and ghost type Pokemon, and that fire has now engulfed its entire head. Now, this Pokemon is actually based off the headless mule, which in Brazilian folklore is a mythical creature, which I think is a very cool connection here. And then lastly, our water starter is called Usamut, which is already a water and ground type Pokemon, which is really interesting to have a dual typing in the first starter. So rather just being a water starter, is a water and ground type. And of course, is based on a mud crab. It evolves into Garamum, and one of its claws has been hardened from all the soil in the ground, and actually uses that to like clobber its opponents. And lastly, it becomes a water and steel type Pokemon when it evolves into Kangation. As you can see, it definitely looks more like a pirate now, and that arm has changed into a blade. But this is actually based on Lampião, which is a very famous Brazilian bandit, as you can see in the hat and in like those glasses as well. So which starter are you going to pick? I'm going to take the water starter because I love this whole line. I think it looks really cool. But let me know down in the comments below which starter you're going to pick. Going into Route 1 now, and the Route 1 bird is Masked, which is a normal and flying type. As you can see, it does look like it has a mask over its eyes, kind of like a Zorro mask. Even though Zorro's not Brazilian, I think that's a very cool connection there. And it actually evolves into a heron. This is Herongant, which is a very graceful kind of Pokemon, and I think that looks pretty cool. Next, we have Priya, which is a pure normal type and is based on a rodent. There's lots of rodents in Brazil out in the wild, so this is one of them. And it evolves into Seedon, and that green coloring on the back looks really nice and actually changes based on the healthiness of the Pokemon. So if a Pokemon's really healthy, it's nice and bright and green. If it's not healthy, it goes dark and dry. So I think that's a cool connection. And then, of course, our Route 1 bug is Gulava. Interesting expression on his face there. And evolves into Kazantina, which looks like a fluffy cocoon kind of thing, which I think is kind of cool. But those antennas that it's got actually holds onto branches on trees, and it uses that to get healthy itself, but also to increase the health of the tree it's hanging onto as well. And then lastly, evolves into Serenfly, obviously based on a butterfly, but as you can see, it's got two big eyes that it uses to scare away predators on the bottom of the butterfly there, which is very common in butterflies in the real world as well. And next, we have a water and fighting type Pokemon. Doesn't evolve or anything, but I think this looks really, really cool. This is called Batunch, and it's based on the beta or the Siamese fighting fish. And as you can see, it definitely looks like a fighter with that expression and the scars that it has as well. Next, we have Taguim, which is a pure dark type Pokemon. It looks kind of interesting how it's very bold over there. Definitely looks like it's missing something, but does actually use its cuteness to trick trainers and then ends up stealing from them. So it's a thief Pokemon. And evolves into Sargive, which is actually based on a Marmoset now. I'm glad it's not bold anymore. It's got some hair, but I love the tail on it, and again, it is a thief. And then next we have Chokibara, which I'm not sure, but this could be the Pika clone of the region. It's a pure electric type, and is of course based on the Capybara, which are very common in Brazil. And evolves into Amphibara, which is now an electric and water type Pokemon, and actually uses water currents to turn that into electricity that it stores in its cheeks, which definitely makes me think that it's the Pika clone of the region. Next is Calagon, which is a pure dragon type Pokemon, and this is based on the Calango, which is a small lizard that lives in Brazil. It evolves into Lizarine, which is kind of looking a bit more maybe like a monitor lizard now, definitely looking bigger than the Calango, but the green that is along its back actually determines how high of a rank it is within its pack. So the longer and the more green that it is, the more important it is in its pack, which I think is really interesting. And then lastly evolves into Crueptile, combining reptile and cruel together. This is a very mean Pokemon, doesn't get on with others, and is very hard to train. I love the long tail that it uses as a weapon, but even just the coloring on it, the orange claws and like along the eye as well, I think looks really cool. Matches really nicely with the green specs on it as well. Next is Floribee, which of course based on a hummingbird, very common in Brazil. This is a fairy and flying type Pokemon, and I think looks pretty cute. I do like the coloring on this one as well. And then it evolves into Vizlumbird, which is much bigger now. It looks, obviously has that massive needle-like beak that hummingbirds do have, but this is actually a very peaceful Pokemon, and it distributes the scent across the region that makes everyone really peaceful and really calm, which is kind of nice. Next is Korak, which is a pure poison type Pokemon. It looks like a sea snake, which I think is very cool, but it has a really cool design because it can actually go into a disguised form, which looks like a Pokeball, which I think looks insane. And the shiny version of it looks like a Premier Ball as well, and evolves into Tricoral, which is now poison and dragon type Pokemon. Probably has that dragon typing because it looks like a Hydra with the 3 heads, which I think is really nice. But this one doesn't have a disguised form now. And then next is Dwebble, which is a steel and water type. Obviously the Kostan form of Dwebble. This looks really sad. Actually looks kind of hopeful. It's got a bit of a hopeful look in its eyes, but of course it's based on pollution. It's got like a soda can, its shell, and then evolves into Crustle, which is a steel and poison type, and definitely does not look very hopeful anymore, unfortunately. Massive oil barrel that is broken and spilling oil all over its face. Kind of giving me the same vibe as Galarian Casola there, which is also a very sad Pokemon. Next is Cobilho, which is a pure grass type Pokemon, obviously based on a piece of corn. And I know some people don't like food-based Pokemon like your Vanillite line, but I think this looks really cool. Maybe its expression is making it look good. It evolves into Pamilho, and I think the bow tie made of rope, I think, is looking really, really cool. It does look like a humorous kind of Pokemon as well with that expression that it uses. And then lastly evolves into Palahoy, which is now grass and fairy type. And you can see that bow tie is definitely neatened up a bit now. Looks like a very dapper kind of bow tie. And this is based off a corn husk doll. And now we have our Kostan Teddy Ursa, which looks kind of cool. This is a pure psychic type. It looks like it's got those coconuts that you knock together to make a sound. And then evolves into our Kostan Ursaring, which looks kind of weird actually. The expression is kind of interesting, but that's because it's based on La Ursa, which is a Brazilian festival where they have bear masks that have this same expression, which is kind of creepy. And then we have Formorm, which is a pure bug type Pokemon looking like a grub. I do like the little spikes that it's got off it though, which is kind of interesting. But then evolves into Formagma, so obviously looking like a bull ant now, but this is a bug and fire type. And I love the magma that it's got in its antennas, but also in its abdomen as well. And then lastly evolves into Queen Adura. It's lost its fire typing because it's now a bug and flying type because it's the queen ant. And I love how it's sitting. It looks like it's got its legs crossed and it's sitting on a throne. Next is Tapimari, which is a fairy and water type Pokemon, and it combines tapioca with a shellfish giving it that water typing there. So you can see why it's in a shell there, but this actually has a bunch of different forms. This has a vegan, a cheese, and a chocolate form, so it's definitely based on food. Next is Figantum, which is a pure ghost type Pokemon. It's like a little statue or like a little idol, and apparently brings good luck. So if you catch a Figantum, you're meant to actually give it to another trainer to give them good luck. And it evolves into Kerrang, which is a Pokemon that wards away evil spirits, and is actually based on a Karanka, which is a little wooden idol that is in Brazil. And then next we have Tatuna, which is based on a sea turtle, but this is a pure ground type Pokemon. Instead of being in the ocean, these actually ride up and down the sand dunes in the deserts. And then evolves into Junaruga, which is a very happy Pokemon. I like the expression on it, but its shell is actually quite different, and it's actually one that trainers in the region will stand on top of its shell and ride it down the sand dunes, kind of like a surfboard. And then next is Carcahawk, which is a flying and dark type Pokemon, and this is based on the Caracara, which is a bird of prey that lives in Brazil and actually has a symbiotic relationship with the Kostan Maractus. And it's a symbiotic relationship because the birds actually stand on top of the Maractus to keep their talons off the hot desert floor. So they work together, and it obviously protects the Maractus as well. Maractus here in the Kosta region is a grass and ground type Pokemon. Going into some fossil Pokemon now. So our first one is Saberlin, which is a rock and dark type Pokemon, obviously based on a saber-toothed tiger, and evolves into Hun Tiger, which I think looks really, really cool. I love the look of this. Definitely looks very dangerous and very aggressive as well. And then next is Yormos, which is a grass and rock type Pokemon, obviously based on a sloth, but because this is a fossil Pokemon, I think it's more so based on the giant ground sloth or Megatherium. And I love that it's a grass type and has moss on it because sometimes sloths move so slow that moss actually grows on the backs of them. And evolves into Gigglemoss, which is a very, very big Pokemon again. I think looks like the giant ground sloth. And of course, is a very peaceful Pokemon. And we have Chicute next, which is a pure ground type Pokemon. Obviously looks like it's got an egg on its head as well, which is kind of like a helmet, which I think is nice. Now, when Chicute evolves, if it's a female, it evolves into Hefina, which is the ground and fire type. I love the flame that's on its wing there as well, and definitely looks kind of aggressive, not like your normal chicken. But if your Chicute is male, it evolves into Tarosta, which is obviously a fighting rooster Pokemon. It's a ground and fighting type instead of the ground and fire type. And I love like the belt or the ribbon around its waist, which I think looks really interesting. Definitely makes it look like a fighter. And Chagasect is next, which is a dark and poison type. Obviously based on a bug, but it has the word Chagas in it, which is actually a disease that some insect pass to humans, which can be found in Brazil and South America. So kind of grim, but I guess that's why this is a poison type. This looks kind of creepy, actually. This is not a Pokemon that I would want to see if I was a trainer in this region. Next is our Kosta Wooloo, which is very different to our normal Wooloo because it's obviously been shorn. And you can see it is a pure ground type as well, but still looks very friendly and very happy. But it actually has a different evolution. It evolves into Bodorn, which is now ground and rock type. And it looks like it's based off a mountain goat where it's got massive horns, and you can see it's got a bell around it as well. Apparently so its trainer doesn't lose this Pokemon. And then next we have Tamandupi, which is based on an anteater. This is a pure normal type Pokemon. And I love how long its tail is as well. It's almost got little white feathers almost on the tail. And it evolves into Tamanbia. So as you can see, the anteater is getting much longer now. Definitely has more of an anteater kind of face, you can see, and it's got some claws on it too. It is now a normal and fighting type Pokemon. And then lastly evolves into Tupinasik. I think that's how you say it. And I love it's got like that come at me bro expression that we see on that anteater meme. But I'm not sure what's going on with the tail there. I'm sure in this region there's a lot of Brazilian references that I'm missing. So even though I did a lot of research, please let me know down in the comments below if there's any references that I've been missing. While you're down there, guys, don't forget to give a like on the video as well if you're enjoying this, and subscribe for a lot more Pokemon content and other Fakemon regions as well. I think this is a great time to let you know the sponsor of the video, which is G Fuel, because I'm celebrating my 2-year partnership with G Fuel at the moment. I have G Fuel every time I'm doing a mass editing session and every time I'm streaming as well. So if you're looking for a massive pick-me-up while you're gaming, get yourself some energy with G Fuel and use code METAL at checkout to save up to 30% off your order. But let's get back into it, guys. Next is Gingaha, which is a pure fighting type Pokemon. It's actually based on Capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art cross dance style, which is very common in Brazil, and evolves into Mestrimba, which looks like it's breakdancing at the moment. You can definitely see why it would be a fighting type. But again, based on Capoeira, and I do love the design of this Pokemon. Next is Droxen, which is a dragon and poison type Pokemon. And this is actually based on a blue Gorkas, which is like a blue dragon sea slug kind of animal, but is actually very, very small in real life. So this Pokemon's probably small as well, but gets much bigger as it evolves into Segonsin, which is apparently very, very poisonous. And one of these can kill 300 trainers in the region. So if you own this Pokemon, you have to be very careful. And then next is Echolfin, which is a pure water type Pokemon, obviously based on a dolphin. And I do love that the blowhole on its head kind of looks like a target as well, but then changes from a dolphin into a whale, probably a humpback whale, I think, as it evolves into Melodine. It is a water and ice type Pokemon now, and I think it's a humpback because of the texture that's got on it. The ice on the front of it obviously has lots of bumps and ridges on it as well. And then Zimbraz is next, which looks like marbles, and this is probably, if anyone is Brazilian, this probably is very nostalgic for them. This is a pure fairy type Pokemon, and as you can see, they're all individual but together form the Pokemon, so it does remind me of Execute a little bit. And then Curlio is next, which is a ground and ghost type Pokemon. It definitely looks like one of those lion statues, but I love that the tail kind of looks like a pot, and it definitely looks like a peaceful kind of Pokemon. Soliance is a ghost and steel type Pokemon, which kind of looks like a ring, but obviously there's a big claw coming out of that ring. And I know some people don't like inanimate objects as Pokemon, but check out the rest of this line. It evolves into Dubliance, which you can see is now 2 rings connected, but obviously still has that spectral ghost element in it. But then lastly, the bond has been broken between the rings, and it evolves into Breakchaos, and it's got that spectral element, which has almost been released from the rings now. And the rings, because they're broken, have formed claws as well. So I think that is a really cool design. It's like a bond has been formed between the rings, but then divorce, breakup, something, I don't know, has caused the ghost to escape and is now causing chaos, as you can tell in its name. Next, we have a manatee based Pokemon, which is called Branatee, and it is a pure psychic type, but it has got like seaweed that forms the back of it, almost looks like hair on it. And that seaweed on its hair actually has healing properties, which I think is cool. And the Kosta Rockruff in this region is a pure normal type Pokemon, and this is now based on a maned wolf, as you can definitely tell within that coloring and sort of the long limbs that it has. It evolves into Lycanroc, again stays a pure normal type, and you can definitely see looks a lot more like an adult maned wolf now. Next is Jaguar, I think that's how you say it, which is based on a jaguar, of course. It is a pure electric type, and you can see its tail kind of forms like a lightning bolt, I would say, and then evolves into Jaguar, again based on a jaguar. And I love the design of this. The paws are absolutely massive, which jaguars have as well, but it's almost got like a crown of lightning bolts on its head now. I do just love the pattern and the design across its whole body as well. And then next is Naclista, which is a pure rock type. Obviously we have Nacli now in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but this artist actually drew this about 1.5 years ago, not long before Scarlet and Violet was actually made, and they've used even the same name as well as in the Pokemon design design is very, very similar, which I think is a crazy coincidence, or maybe Pokemon creators saw this and then wanted to use it. I don't know. And then evolves into Sailor Knuckle. Again, you've got the Knuckle, like in the whole Knuckly line. Looks like a massive pile of salt together. So it's crazy that the artist made this before Scarlet and Violet even came out. But the artist has done a fantastic job in this region. If you're enjoying this, check them out. Kosta on Instagram and on Twitter. The information is down in the description. Go give them a follow because they're doing amazing work. And they're actually working on an expansion for this region as well. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Bazia is next, which is a pure psychic type Pokemon. And obviously it looks like a cow, but it looks kind of derpy with its tongue sticking out, which I think is very cute. But this actually has a split evolution. First is Boiba, which is a psychic and ghost type Pokemon. And it's actually based on Boibamba, which is a massive festival in Brazil. Lots of festivals there, where they use masks that look like a black cow, kind of similar to this. So you can see the name and the design has very interesting ties to that. But then the other evolution is Nimboy, which is based on cumulus nimbus clouds. As you can see, the massive cloud look coming off from its body, from its shoulders, all the way down to its tail. It looks like it has 3 tails because they've all split off. And also between the horns there, it's got some clouds as well. Next, we have a Pokemon that doesn't evolve. It is called Quatail. It's a pure electric type Pokemon and is based on a Coati, which has a very long tail. And I love how they've used the tail here to almost make like electric coil. So I think the connection between the electric typing and the tail there is very, very well done by the artist. And then next we have Tricida, which is a bug and normal type Pokemon. This actually has a 3-way split evolution. Now, all of these evolutions are very humanoid. The first one is Glaciosa, bug and ice type Pokemon. It has like that woolly hat on its head and a scarf, of course. The other option is Scamosa, which is a bug and dragon type, and the hair almost looks like devil horns, I would say. And then lastly, which is Steelosa, which has some steel spikes along it as well. And of course is our bug and steel type Pokemon. Our last Costan form for the region is our Costan Rowlet, which is actually an ice and flying type now. So it definitely looks like Rowlet, I think, but it's now got like an icy bow, which is very cute. It evolves into Dartrix. It's still got like more of a ghostly kind of ice element, I would say, but it is an ice and flying type still. But our final evolution is not Decidueye, it is Razgamort. So it looks awesome. I love how it's holding like a spectral ghostly element. I knew it was going to evolve into a ghost type. It looked ghostly before, but now it is ghost and ice type. And it's got that icy lantern with like an icy mist coming out, which I think looks fantastic. I love the look of this Pokemon. It looks really, really cool. And now we're going to start going into the legendaries for this region. Now, there are 3 legendaries that are in both games, but then after this, we're going to go into the box legendaries as we saw at the start of the video. So firstly, we have Janiden, which is a fire spirit Pokemon. Now, all 3 of these next ones, I'm going to show you all spirit Pokemon, and they're all based on the June Spirit Festival, which of course is in Brazil. So first, fire and fairy type in Janiden, which I think looks very, very interesting. I love like the grassy kind of hat that it has, even though it's a fire type. Next is Junaptus, which combines June for the festival and Baptist in it as well. And almost got like a little Pokemon or a little spirit that it's holding as well. Looks very, very cute. I love the happy expression that it has. And then last, fire and flying, is Juneven. So obviously it combines heaven in there as well. And again, it's holding a little spirit, which I think is very, very cute and looks very happy. And now going into our box art legendaries. First one is Mermelody, which is a water and dragon type Pokemon. And I think this looks amazing. It almost looks like a Leviathan, but has a massive, almost like shell, crown, spiky helmet, something on the back of its head there, which looks fantastic. I love the design of this Pokemon. And then our other box legendary is Harpiera, which is of course based on the Harpy Eagle as well, but it's a steel and flying type Pokemon. There's almost like a lot of prismatic elements, I think. We've got like teardrop shapes on the feathers. The talons are shiny and prismatic as well. The beak, there's lots of shiny reflective elements, which I think looks very, very interesting on this Pokemon here. And now the mythical for this legendary is called Maracatu, which is a pure steel type Pokemon. And it's based off Maracatu, another festival that is in Brazil where people dress up with massive wigs that kind of look like this as well. So that's the connection there. What an amazing region. I think the artist did a fantastic job on this. Let me know down in the comments what your favorites were. My favorites were Kangation, which was the water final evolution for the starter Pokemon. And I think both Mermelody and Harpiera as well. But make sure you guys subscribe for a lot more Pokemon videos and check out some of my other Fakemon regions as well. Thanks.